Hello, everyone. We have some sad breaking news today, and I'm going to get right into it. Pope Francis passed away on April 21st at 88 years old. He was from Buenos Aires, Argentina, and had been a religious leader for a long time. Francis was the first Jesuit pope and the first pope from the Americas. Pope Francis, the 266th leader of the Roman Catholic Church, died on Monday, a little over 12 years after he became pope. He was 88. Pope Francis died on Easter Monday, April 21st, 2025, at 88, at his home in the Vatican's Casa Santa Marta. The Vatican said in a statement on X on Monday. A news release on the Vatican's website said he died at 7:35 a.m. local time. Francis had a few health scares during his life. When he was 21, he had a respiratory infection that led to removing part of his right lung. In February, Francis went to the Agostino Gemelli Polyclinic Hospital, where doctors found a respiratory tract infection. Later, they found he had pneumonia in both lungs and some kidney issues. In March, his doctors said he was no longer in danger of dying, and he left the hospital on March 23rd. He often supported migrants and refugees, talked about the climate crisis, and criticized capitalism. He also supported civil union laws for same-sex couples, wanted the death penalty gone worldwide, and called the treatment of indigenous students at Canadian church-related boarding schools genocide. The day before he died, they brought him out on the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica in a wheelchair, where he gave his Easter blessing to thousands of people. Born Jorge Mario Bergoglio, Francis started being pope on March 13, 2013. He was the first Jesuit pope chosen by the papal voters in the Vatican, replacing Pope Benedict XVI. Francis was also the first pope from the Americas. He was born and grew up in Buenos Aires, Argentina, where he held high religious positions, like archbishop. In the summer of 2022, Francis thought about retiring because of his health. "I think at my age, I need to save my energy to serve the church, or think about stepping down," he told reporters in July 2022. "It's not weird. It's not a disaster," Francis said. "You can change the pope."
Time bouncer who became Pope, Jorge Bergoglio was born in Argentina and became the Archbishop of Buenos Aires in 1998. When he became Pope in 2013, he took the name Francis after a saint who championed the poor. The early actions of this new head of the Catholic Church included washing the feet of the elderly and of prisoners. Pope Francis often spoke out about dignity for migrants and refugees, and he cared deeply about the environment, saying climate change was rich countries inflicting damage on poor ones. One of the challenges of his time as Pope was dealing with the sexual abuse of children by priests.
God weeps for the sexual abuse of children.
On a visit to Ireland, he apologised to victims, but more scandals continued to emerge. His time as Pope did mark a change in tone on the subject of homosexuality. Early on, when talking about a gay bishop, he remarked, "Who am I to judge?" But some say in practical terms, on the Vatican stance and on church teachings, there was little change. He had conservative views on abortion, contraception, surrogacy and gender reassignment. Pope Francis leaves behind a much more global church leadership, thanks to his appointment of more than 140 cardinals from non-European countries.
"I always looked at the Pope as open-minded and actually for the people." Let's hear some of his views from an interview he did on CNN.
I was so struck when you talked about the globalization of indifference. What is happening?
Do you want me to state it plainly? People wash their hands. There are so many Pontius Pilates on the loose out there who see what is happening, the wars, the injustice, the crimes. That's okay, and wash their hands. It's indifference. That is what happens when the heart hardens and becomes indifferent. Please, we have to get our hearts to feel again. We cannot remain indifferent in the face of such human dramas. The globalization of indifference is a very ugly disease. Very ugly.
You have said, "Who am I to judge?" Homosexuality is not a crime.
No, it's a human fact.
Pope Francis has died at age 88, announced by the Vatican on Monday, the 21st of April. During his decade of papal service, Pope Francis made a number of statements and gestures aimed at pushing the Church to be more welcoming to the LGBTQ+ community, but has remained regressive in many areas. In 2013, speaking to reporters on a flight back from Brazil, Pope Francis said, "If a person is gay and seeks God and has goodwill, who am I to judge?" In 2019, Pope Francis met with a British lesbian evangelical Anglican who started a foundation to work with religious organizations around the world to eliminate discrimination based on sexuality or gender. She presented Pope Francis with a study from her foundation that detailed the experiences of 458 respondents who had undergone efforts to change their orientation. She told Reuters that Pope Francis seemed to understand what conversion therapy was. "I thought he was extremely warm. He was very pastoral. He seemed concerned. I felt very embraced." In 2020, he met with 40 parents of LGBT+ children to hear their concerns about the Church's disregard for their families. The group's vice president, Mara Grassi, said Pope Francis closed the meeting by saying, "Love your children as they are, because they are children of God." In an interview with the Associated Press in 2023, Pope Francis clarified his views on homosexuality, saying, "Homosexuality is not a crime. Yes, it's a sin, but let's make the distinction first between sin and crime." Just a year later, Pope Francis made history by joining a Ugandan LGBTQ+ rights activist in condemning the discrimination faced by queer people in the country. The activist said Pope Francis reiterated that discrimination is a sin and violence against the LGBTIQ communities is unacceptable. In 2024, in an interview with 60 Minutes, Pope Francis was asked about his decision to allow Catholic priests to bless same-sex couples, to which he clarified his decision.
No, what I allowed was not to bless the union. That cannot be done because that is not the sacrament. I cannot. The Lord made it that way. But to bless each person, yes. The blessing is for everyone.
Tributes to Pope Francis are pouring in from leaders around the world. From former President Joe Biden, who said Pope Francis will be remembered as one of the most consequential leaders of our time, and I am better for having known him. To the UK's Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, who said his tireless efforts to promote a world that was fairer for all will leave a lasting legacy. President Emmanuel Macron of France said Pope Francis wanted the Church to bring joy and hope to the poorest. May it unite people with each other and with nature. May this hope continually revive beyond. As the
conclave will commence in some 15 to 20 days from now to choose a new pope, Pope Francis put in place 110 cardinals of the 138 or so that will vote for the next pope. So that is a big influence he has had on the Church, even though he has not changed essentially much of the doctrine. So I think that's worth noting as well.
By now, you've probably already heard that Pope Francis died at the age of 88. And yes, one of the last people that he saw before he died is Vice President J.D. Vance, who pushed extra hard to get an in-person meeting with him after the Pope had already sent his number 2 out to lecture J.D. Vance on the importance of compassion. The Pope died during Jubilee, which happens every 25 years for Catholics and is an extra celebratory Holy Year. This Jubilee began on Christmas Eve of 2024 and will go all the way until the Epiphany of 2026. While plans to organize the Pope's funeral are underway, I want to just put one flag out there for you, and that is who could be Pope next. Now, I don't believe that the Vatican will ever pick an American because it would give the Americans way too much power in the Catholic Church. But you're going to start to see a massive propaganda campaign trying to advance the profile of Cardinal Burke. This is Cardinal Burke. He is a massive pro-Trump, conservative, right-wing figure in the Catholic Church. He was born in Wisconsin. He's the cardinal that said Joe Biden shouldn't get communion because Biden supported abortion rights. He is pro-death penalty, anti-palliative care, and anti-stem cell research. Obviously anti-abortion, very much anti-LGBTQ. He once tried to get Sheryl Crow fired from a gig because of her support of women's reproductive health. He is openly pro-Trump, and he is the cardinal behind the so-called man crisis in the Catholic Church. You may have heard that the fastest growing demographic of people joining the Catholic Church are young white men. That is because of the efforts of Cardinal Burke. He called the lack of men in the church a man crisis and blamed it on feminism and the fact that girls for the last 20 years or so have been allowed to be altar servers. But perhaps most concerningly, he was the president of the board of advisors to Steve Bannon's Dignitas Humanae Institute, which is an academy that was set up by Bannon to train far right-wing Catholic activists. Cardinal Burke did step down in 2019 from being president of this board, mostly because he was made aware that Steve Bannon was trying to make a film exposing homosexuality in the Vatican. The film based on a book, Closet of the Vatican. but he has not in any way strayed from his extremely pro-Trump leanings. So while many mourn the death of the Pope, and while there are many conversations going on about who will succeed him, for the American audience, I want you to know that this is who you are likely to start hearing a ton about. I've already seen people starting to write this up because the Trump people are going to start to try to promote Cardinal Burke as the Pope, which would only give massive increased power to the sort of like Trump universe.
We're in Vatican City right now, cooking up the most homophobic priests imaginable. Are you anti-environmentalist? Pro-corruption? Pro-capitalism? Are you pro-Israel? How would you like to be in charge of the biggest religious institution in the world? Pope Francis is the brownest a pope can get before the cardinals start getting scared. And he's not even brown. Both of his parents are literally Italians. I promise you, we are not getting another Global South Pope. They let you get one off, and now they have learned their lesson. That is not happening again. And him dying not even a day after a visit from J.D. Vance, as if we needed any more evidence that Vance was a servant of the devil. Kind of relatable though, because if I were to meet an adult Catholic convert, I too would keel over from the pure cringe. No, but actually this is pretty terrible. Pope Francis was probably the most progressive, most anti-establishment pope that we are ever going to experience in our lifetimes. Not to say that he was like a liberal or anything, he's a Catholic priest at the end of the day, but it is just terrible timing to lose the most influential religious leader as a voice against imperialism, against oligarchy, against fascism, at a time when the world is turning so quickly towards all of those things.
I'm saddened by the death of the Pope and consider this a real loss for the world. It's like another light went out in all this darkness. But what really scares me, what's been scaring me since he's been sick, is who would be great enough to take his place. Of course, our administration never liked him because he condemned all the things he saw them doing to the American people and the immigrants that came here for safety. It's without a doubt that they would have their hands in the pot on trying to pick the next one who would fit their agenda. This is a breaking story, and I'll be back with another video on the people's reaction to his death and what they think will be happening next. Thanks for watching and supporting the channel. Please be sure to like and subscribe before you go. Leave a comment and let us know how you feel about the life and passing of Pope Francis. Let us know what's on your mind. Thank you. We see you.